Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a seriously mind-bending white paper by Carlos A. Padron. We're tackling a massive question. Is the human brain actually a boundless learning machine, or are we literally physically locked out of understanding the universe's deepest secrets?
So are there mysteries out there we're biologically incapable of understanding? It's a question that completely challenges everything we like to believe about human potential. To figure this out, we're going to take a journey from the microscopic anatomy of our neurons, right out to the sheer computational minutes of the cosmos itself. Let's see exactly where our mental boundaries actually lie.
Section 1. The hardware bottleneck inside the human skull. To understand why genius is so incredibly rare, we first got to look at the literal biological hardware inside our heads. We often talk about intelligence like it's just a single simple trait, right? Maybe even tied to one magical intelligence gene. But the science tells a completely different story. Human intelligence relies on a super delicate, highly polygenic architecture. Think of it like a massive orchestra, where every single instrument has to be in perfect tune. The leading neuroscientific model for this is called the PFIT network, and building this network doesn't just take one gene. It requires a statistically rare combination of thousands of tiny genetic variants, all having to align perfectly during development. Mapping this out, the required connections across specific frontal and parietal regions are crystal clear. Genius basically requires the coherent development of this entire network. And the white paper proved that a disruption to literally any node in this delicate hardware degrades our overall cognitive performance. It's just an incredibly fragile biological system. And running this massive network, it is not cheap. Maintaining this hardware is incredibly taxing on the body. In fact, our brain consumes a staggering 20% of our resting metabolic energy. Think about that for a second. It makes up only about 2% of our body mass, but it demands 1/5 of our total daily energy just to keep the lights on. It's the ultimate energy-hogging app running in the background of your body. This incredibly high energy budget really illustrates our metabolic ceiling. Human evolution had to make some massive sacrifices just to pay the energetic cost of our 86 billion cortical neurons. To afford this biological supercomputer, our evolutionary ancestors actually had to sacrifice gut size, reduce muscle mass, and lower our body fat percentages. We're physically weaker than other great apes simply because our metabolic budget is completely maxed out by our brains. Section 2, the software patch. Can education fix this? So if our hardware is limited by intense energy demands and rare genetics, you're probably wondering, can we just write better software? Like, can we use advanced education to hack our way past these biological limits? Well, the white paper separates the hope from the hype here. First off, we have to ditch popular neuromyths, like the old idea that we only use 10% of our brains, or that people have specific visual or auditory learning styles. If we leave those behind and focus strictly on evidence-based realities, things like deliberate practice, spaced repetition, and retrieval practice, we can absolutely improve things. Educational optimization can shift average population intelligence up by about half a standard deviation. But here's the catch. It still cannot remove the hard biological floor or ceiling. The crucial takeaway is that even with perfect educational software, every single one of us is still bottlenecked by our hardware. We all have an absolute working memory capacity of roughly 4 chunks of information at a time. This isn't about a lack of focus. It's a hard, physical limitation of our prefrontal and parietal neural circuitry. You can't train a brain to hold 10 items in active focal attention, any more than you can train a human to just sprout wings. Section 3. The Savannah Mismatch. Survival versus physics. To really grasp what's going on, let's take a quick trip back to our ancestral past to see why we hit such intense cognitive walls when studying the universe. Ultimately, our brains are survival engines, not physics engines. We evolved to navigate the social complexities, the sudden threats, and the short-term causal realities of the African savanna. That's what we were optimized for. And it's exactly why concepts like higher dimensions, deep evolutionary time, or quantum superposition feel completely impossible to grasp instinctively. Our brains just were not designed for them. Our core cognitive modules are perfectly tailored for things like face recognition, tool use, and social reasoning. This means our profound struggle to comprehend infinite realities, dark matter, or the true bizarre nature of quantum mechanics isn't because we aren't trying hard enough. It's a fundamental mismatch between our evolved Pleistocene biology and the universe's actual underlying nature. We're essentially trying to run modern cosmological physics on ancient savanna hardware. Section 4. The ultimate wall. Cognitive closure. This brings us to what might be the most mind-bending philosophical precipice in the entire white paper. It's a concept known as cognitive closure. This is the terrifying idea that there are objective, fundamental truths about reality that we are biologically locked out of ever comprehending. And we can actually prove this closure mathematically by stacking 3 undeniable theoretical proofs. First, Gödel's incompleteness theorem, which shows that any formal system has true statements it simply cannot prove. Second, Turing demonstrated that some problems are straight-up computationally undecidable for any machine. And third, Busso's holographic bound proves that the physical information content of any region, like, say, the human brain, is completely finite. Stacked together, these prove that any computational system is physically and mathematically constrained. This leads to a pretty chilling realization about the human condition, famously summarized by philosopher Colin McGinn. There are truths which a given cognitive system can formulate but never understand. Because we exist as finite computational systems, made of meat and electricity, sitting inside a finite universe, we can write down the mathematical equations for quantum field theory, but we may literally never possess the biological hardware required to truly internalize what those equations actually mean. To really put this scale into perspective, scientists have calculated the absolute computational capacity of the entire observable universe since the very moment of the Big Bang. That number is a staggering 10 to the power of 120 operations. Any biological brain, no matter how much of a genius you are, is just a tiny, microscopic, localized fraction of this ultimate limit. We simply do not have the physical space or the energy inside our skulls to process the totality of the universe. Section 5. Breaking the cage. Pathways to superintelligence. So, if our current biological hardware is maxed out, and natural evolution is way too slow to change that, and we're facing an absolute wall of cognitive closure, what do? How do we transcend these limits to achieve true superintelligence? The white paper concludes that we just cannot rely on natural evolution. The only viable pathways forward involve radical intentional interventions. We're talking about engineering at the source, like polygenic embryo selection to stack those intelligence variants, or targeted genetic engineering. It might even mean directly plugging machines into our cortex with closed-loop neuroprosthetics, or eventually achieving hybrid digital intelligence and whole brain emulation. Which brings us to the ultimate crossroads of human evolution. I want to leave you with this provocative final thought to ponder as we wrap up. If we are truly trapped in an ape's biological cage, bounded by calories, skull size, and the savanna, is the only way to finally, truly understand the mysteries of the universe, to cease being biologically human altogether? Thanks for joining this explainer. Keep questioning the limits of what's possible.